Last not least, Nordstrom move into DNVB. What is that? Nordstrom move into DNVB home. What is that? I don't even know what that is.
Okay, all right. Too many acronyms. That's the first thing. So,
welcome to the Remarkable Retail Podcast, Season 3, Episode 10. Can you believe it's October, the 10th month of the year? I'm Michael LeBlanc.
And I'm Steve Dennis.
Last not least, Nordstrom move into DNVB. What is that? Nordstrom move into DNVB home. What is that? I don't even know what that is.
Okay, all right. Too many acronyms. That's the first thing. So, Nordstrom in general over the last year or so, I want to say, has been dialing up HomeGoods. You know, they're primarily an apparel fashion retailer, pretty small home presence. They've been expanding that a bit online, expanding that a bit in their stores. They seem to be making a bigger move now. They've signed up with about, I think it was 17 or 18 of these digitally native vertical brands, mostly small, to offer those products online and in store. But the big move, the interesting move, I think, is they're going to, within their newish Manhattan store, they're going to have a 2-story department focused on home. So taking a very small area and really dialing it up. And I think this is an interesting move. I mean, number one, certainly the home area has been a hot area, so it's just kind of leaning into the trend. I know when I worked on some things at Neiman Marcus, but for some other folks, there's always been this, you know, if you got the customer that's buying apparel and shoes and all this other stuff from you, you know, what else do they buy? Well, you know, they buy towels, they buy. So you know, some of these luxury brands have had a actually pretty decent home business. The thing that I think is worth watching is lots of these department stores, particularly the high-end department stores, their stores are just too big for a digital age. And so, you know, as you think about, you know, Saks is putting WeWork in there. Nordstrom seems to be thinking about selling merchandise that also they can sell online. So whether this is, you know, the fact that they're doing it in New York City, I think is interesting because that's a brand new store or almost brand new store. So I suspect, you know, and it's an interesting place to test things because it's certainly not your average market. So I suspect we'll see them push the edges a little bit more with their home offering and you know, more of their chain, you know, suburban stores or other cities. So, but I think it
makes sense to me. I mean, it makes sense. I mean, as you know, in New York, they have the women's and the men's across the street from each other, basically, right? And the newest one, I would argue, probably going to be the last department store built in America in a traditional way. It's 6-7 stores. I mean, it's 6-7 floors. I as you know, I do tours or used to, but will again do tours, and you know, it's base level shoes. And by the time you go up to the 5th or 6th level, I mean, it's a great place to be alone with your thoughts. Let me put that charitably. So, you know, it's not a bad idea to start thinking about. We tried to do that at Hudson's Bay, right? We had a big property as a flagship store, 7 floors. You know, the 6 and 7 were furniture. Listen, if I wanted a moment alone with myself, I'd go sit in the couch up on the 7th floor when I worked there. Nobody would bother me because it's, you know, it's tough to get people up 7 floors to look at furniture.
That was the model, I think, for the major urban areas. I mean, if you go to, you know, you go to Sydney, you go to Tokyo, you go to London, you go to Paris, you know, 6, 7, 8. I mean, Marshall Field's in Chicago, I think 10 stories, something like that. The Macy's we were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
You know, that was the model in these major cities. And, you know, you had a little bit of everything and restaurants and the whole deal. But I think even for my experience at Neiman Marcus and at Sears as well, you know, there are a lot of these 3-story suburban stores as well, which are just massive. And the 3rd store tended to be home and, you know, the credit department or whatever. And I can tell you, you know, even in the halcyon days of department stores, not a ton of traffic on the 3rd floor. So, you know, creating
it's not exactly an impulse good either, right? I mean, it is a destination shop. So
I think the theory was the stuff on the 3rd floor was either you know, HomeGoods and frequent stuff, or personal shopping or something like that, because the customer's coming in and you put some of the couture brands or whatever.
Yeah.
It's not the traffic
Yep.
impulse for sure. But I think it will be interesting over time to see, not just with the higher end department stores, but the Macy's of the world, with just these massive stores. And, what do they close off the top floor, or do they find something
Yep.
interesting to do? And it's sort of free real estate in one way of looking at it. So, that, I guess, opens up
Yeah.
that can cut both ways, I guess. But I think for Nordstrom, this certainly is a logical move. And I guess the other thing I'd add about it quickly is I really like what Nordstrom is doing, what Target is doing with, certainly as we talked about with Target pushing their private brands, having something that's a great value but
Mm.
proprietary to them. Nordstrom's been pretty aggressive. We talked with Drew Green from Indochino about bringing in these brands that have a great brand value proposition but don't have a ton of distribution. So they're not
Yeah.
exclusive, but they're semi exclusive, and that's a point of
Limited. Yeah.
differentiation. It's a way of driving perhaps some incremental traffic, and creating an image that you're at more the leading edge of what's next in new. So,
and I want to remind the listeners, or conversely the viewers, well, if you're viewing this, you already know we have a YouTube channel, and it's bonus content, because you and I chit and chat for actually closer to 20 minutes, half an hour, but we kind of, for time, we kind of trim that down to about 10 minutes. But if you want to hear our full discussion, we get into some fun stuff back and forth. Let's get into this Honey, I Shrunk the Store discussion. So let's kick it off.